would like to talk some more also about those who are not a part of I mean, neither Cubans or Americans, different NGOs. What are their position been? And yeah, if you could just elaborate on that.
Yes. Well, we have had support, as I said before, of Amnesty International twice. They have
recommend the report.
yes, this report was very good. It was the trial itself, the case of the five itself, saying that it was not fair, and they should review the trial. But before this one, they also made a release years before regarding the visas of the two wives that are not able to have regular visits with their husbands. Also, the Commission of Human Rights of United Nations, the Commission and Arbitrary Detentions of the United Nations, the Council of Churches of some countries, and the Lawyers Guilds also of many countries, and of course I have to say now that when you said 10 Nobel Prizes, which is not an organization, but also I could say now 11 because recently Jimmy Carter was in Cuba 3 days ago, and he said that he supports the release of the Cuban Five, that they have been in prison for 12 years, that the trial was not fair, and that he will go back to the United States and to the Obama administration's transmitting this message and saying that he supports the release of the Cuban Five. He met with the wives and the moms of the Cuban Five when he was in Cuba, and so for us that's very important because we think that now, besides the fact that we know the United States administration knows about the case of the five because they have been receiving the message everywhere they go. Obama was recently in Latin America, and for instance, we know that in Salvador, the FMLN gave him, as soon as he got down from the plane, gave him a letter, welcomed him, and then asked for the release of the Cuban Five. But in spite of that, we had no response from the U.S. government. But now that Jimmy Carter has said that he will take the message back to the White House, we think that it's impossible for them to play deaf and not speak about this case.
And talking about this case, when it comes to the legal aspect, is it true that the legal aspects, I mean, the door are closed, or are there any doors open? And the follow-up question to that, of course, then is, if it's closed, what options are there to actually do something, and what can we do?
The American legal system is quite complicated. So theoretically, you could say that nearly all the avenues of legal avenues have been exhausted, but I saw that they have just filed a new case of habeas corpus presenting new evidence concerning the situation before and during the trial and so on and so forth. I think that one of the things they brought up was the fact that they now know for sure that some of the journalists who were very instrumental in creating opinion against the five had actually been paid by the United States government. Officially, they were being paid for something else. I mean, to work for some anti-Cuban radio station or whatever, I don't remember. But I mean, nevertheless, what they were doing was being paid by the American taxpayers. So this is an additional new factor. There is, in reality, a possibility for the executive branch of government to solve this whole thing. That's what Jimmy Carter knows, who used to be president himself. That is, Barack Obama could quite simply decide to give them clemency and release them, even if he expels them, of course, from the country. But as someone pointed out, we've done that lots of times with Russian spies or Soviet spies earlier, as well as Americans getting sent back more or less the same way when they get caught. So I mean, in reality, you could say it's a rather strange situation, because during the whole Cold War, I mean, the Soviet Union, for instance, had spies all over the United States, and sometimes they got caught. And then the Americans, they had spies all over the Soviet Union, and sometimes they got caught. They would even exchange spies. So what's the terrible thing about the Cubans sending some people, and they weren't even spying on the United States, they're just spying on these counter-revolutionary exile groups. I mean, why should people get so excited about it? I think that, okay, convict them, give them a sentence, and send them out of the country. I mean, they've been in jail for 12 years. Even if they're guilty, I mean, they haven't had a fair trial, but they have admitted something, so fine, send them home. It's enough. There's a possibility to do that, and if there's a strong enough opinion, maybe they finally will someday. But American politics, Barack Obama, hey, it's better than Bush. Anything's better than Bush.
How about you? Do you have anything to add in respect to what's possible to do for us here?
Yes, of course. I think, as pointed out, is the more pressure the United States government feels toward the case of the five, the more close we are to seeing them at home. I think it's important that you, as students, as law students, should do something. Write to your parliament representative. Maybe we are going to meet in parliament tomorrow. We'll see if we can see in this country that is done what many countries before have done, and which is to claim the freedom of the five to the United States government. So anything you do here to put pressure so that United States government feel that there's many people watching what you're doing will be very much appreciated, and in the end we hope that will mean the freedom of the Cuban Five.
Thank you very much. I thought that we would have some time now for a couple of questions about the case. Yeah.
There's no way that the United States has ratified the ICCPR, but has not ratified the right of individual complaint. So this convention has an extra protocol where states, and many states have accepted the extra protocol, allow individuals to make a complaint to the Human Rights Committee. The United States is not one of those countries. It does not accept individual. So the only one who could theoretically bring a case against the United States in the International Committee of Human Rights is another state. So I don't know. I think, and it wouldn't go to the Hague. It goes to the international. It's a committee, the United Nations committee that belongs to this, which is created by this particular convention, and it functions more or less like the European Court of Human Rights. I mean, it has its hearings and so on. The furthest they were able to go was to get this subcommittee of the Commission of Human Rights, which is the Committee for Arbitrary Imprisonment, or whatever it's called. Has 2005, it's made a clear statement. And first they communicated with the United States and had an exchange and allowed both the representatives of the five and the United States government to discuss in front of them. And they still made a very critical report because they didn't feel that the United States government had given them any, they answered, they actually did answer, which the Americans don't always do, but they did. And they were unable to convince this committee. And so the committee made a report which you can read. You can find it, for instance, in this book. I don't know where, if it's sold anywhere here, but anyway, you could, I suppose you probably could get their statements on the internet. You students are very good about finding things. Yeah, I can check the actual name of the committee so that you've got it right. Yeah, there's called a working group.
I'm sure though. It's
The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention is the name of this committee. And it's a subcommittee, I believe, to the Commission of Human Rights, but there's been a reorganization, so I don't know where it fits in or if it still even exists, but it did exist in 2005, and it did make its report. And I believe that you can find it on the United Nations homepage.
And then again also the ICCPR is the International Convention of Civil and Political Rights, which are basic human rights. That's good to know.
Very similar to the European Convention